Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little somber, a time of illness, poverty, and simple remedies. We're diving into how medieval peasants survived plagues without the medicine we take for granted today. Forget the noble knights and grand castles you've seen in movies. The truth is, you probably wouldn't last a week living through a medieval plague. And I'll explain why today. So, before you get comfortable, to like the video and subscribe. But only if you truly enjoy what I create here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always interesting to me seeing who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim your lights, maybe light a candle safely in the distance, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1348. The good news, you're alive. The bad news, so is the plague. Your bed is a thin straw mattress that hasn't been changed in months. The air smells of smoke and unwashed bodies. There's no antibiotics, no hospitals, no understanding of what's causing the illness spreading through your village. You wake before dawn, as most peasants do. The roosters haven't even begun to crow. But your body knows the routine. Sleep is a luxury you cannot afford. Not when survival demands your constant attention. Your eyes adjust to the darkness of your small one-room cottage, shared with your entire family. The walls are wattle and daub, a mixture of clay, straw, and manure plastered over a wooden frame. When it rains, which it often does, the roof of thatch sometimes leaks, creating small puddles on the dirt floor. The dampness is ever present, seeping into your bones during winter months, inviting mold to grow in summer. You don't know that mold can make you sick. You just know that some seasons bring more coughing than others. The air inside your home is thick with smoke. There is no chimney, just a small opening in the roof above the central hearth. The smoke from last night's cooking fire still lingers. It stings your eyes, but you're used to it. Everyone's clothing smells of smoke. Everyone's lungs are coated with it. You don't know about respiratory diseases. You just know that old people cough and wheeze until they don't wake up one morning. This is the way of things. Your family sleeps on the same straw mattress. Your children curled against you for warmth. The youngest sometimes wakes in the night, coughing or crying, and you soothe them back to sleep with whispered stories about saints who protect against illness. You believe these stories completely. There is no separation between the physical and spiritual world in your understanding. Disease comes from sin, or bad air, or an imbalance of humors, or all three at once. No one quite knows, but everyone has theories. You rise quietly, careful not to disturb the others. Sleep is precious, especially now with sickness in the village. 3 houses down. The miller's family has fallen ill. No one visits them anymore. You cross yourself at the thought, mumbling a prayer to Saint Sebastian, protector against plagues. Your grandmother taught you this prayer. Her grandmother taught her. Knowledge passes this way, through whispers and demonstrations, not through books or formal education. The floor is cold beneath your bare feet. Shoes are for church and market days, not for daily wear inside your home. You own 1 pair, made of simple leather, patched many times. They must last. Everything must last, because everything is difficult to replace. The concept of disposable items would be foreign to you, unthinkable. A broken pot is mended with pine resin. A torn shirt is patched with scraps. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is thrown away without consideration of its potential use. You stir the embers of last night's fire, coaxing them back to life with your breath and small pieces of dried straw. Fire is life. Without it, you cannot cook, cannot stay warm, cannot see in the darkness. You've watched your parents make fire since before you could walk. The motions are as natural as breathing. The small flames cast dancing shadows on the walls of your home. In these early morning hours, before the demands of the day press upon you, there is a certain peace in watching the fire grow. The plague came to your village 3 weeks ago. It arrived with a merchant from the coast, his cart laden with salt and cloth. He seemed healthy when he arrived, but by the time he left, he was sweating and unsteady. 4 days later, the first villager fell ill. It was Thomas, the blacksmith's son. His neck swelled with strange lumps. His fever raged. The priest came, administered last rites. Thomas died before sunset. Since then, 7 more have followed. Your village has only 60 souls in total. Each loss is keenly felt. You don't know about bacteria or viruses. You've never heard of Yersinia pestis, the bacterium causing bubonic plague. You don't know about fleas or how they transmit disease from rats to humans. What you know is what you can see. People get sick. They develop swellings. They burn with fever. Most die. Some survive, though no one knows why. Perhaps they are more beloved by God. Perhaps their humors were better balanced. Before illness struck, the uncertainty is part of life, as constant as the changing seasons. As the fire grows, you reach for the iron pot hanging nearby. It's one of your family's most valuable possessions, passed down from your husband's mother. Inside is water, collected yesterday from the stream that runs behind the village. The water isn't clear. It has a brownish tint, bits of plant matter floating in it. You don't boil it to kill bacteria. You don't know about bacteria. You boil it because hot water makes better porridge, and because the village wise woman once said that water heated by fire is safer to drink. She didn't know why, but generations of trial and error had taught her ancestors this truth. The porridge you make is simple, a mixture of ground oats and water. If times were better, you might add a bit of honey or dried fruit. But with the plague, the markets have been quiet. Few travelers pass through, bringing fewer goods to trade. Your family has been eating from its stored supplies, carefully rationing what remains. Hunger is an old companion, one that visits more frequently during times of illness. The porridge bubbles slowly, filling the small cottage with its bland, comforting smell. Outside, the sky begins to lighten. Another day begins. The rhythm of medieval life continues despite the plague, because it must. The crops don't stop growing. The animals don't stop needing care. Death may visit, but life demands attention. You hear your oldest child stirring, and soon the entire family will be awake. There are no leisurely mornings, no concept of sleeping in. The day's light is precious, especially as summer wanes into autumn. Every hour of sunlight must be used. Your husband wakes, coughing slightly. Your heart freezes for a moment. Every cough, every complaint of feeling unwell brings fresh fear, but his forehead is cool when you touch it. His eyes clear. Just the normal morning cough. From a lifetime of smoke and dust, he nods at you. Few words are exchanged. After years together, you move in the practiced dance of a shared life. He builds up the fire while you stir the porridge. The children wake, the youngest crying for a moment before settling. Breakfast is eaten from wooden bowls, carved by your husband during long winter evenings. You own no metal spoons. Those are for wealthy merchants and nobility. Instead, you use pieces of hard bread to scoop the porridge, eating the utensil along with the meal. Nothing wasted. The bread is several days old, hard enough to require soaking in the hot porridge before it can be chewed. Your teeth, like most adults in the village, are worn down, several missing. Toothaches are treated with cloves or whispered charms, sometimes both. The pain either passes or it doesn't. Dentistry, as we know it, doesn't exist. After eating, your husband and oldest son prepare to work in the fields. Most peasants don't own the land they farm. Your family works strips of land belonging to Lord Edmund, who lives in a stone manor, house a half-day's walk from the village. Each year, nearly half of what you grow goes to him as rent and taxes. It doesn't matter that there's plague. The Lord's portion must still be paid. The crops must still be tended. If your family doesn't work, doesn't produce, you will not survive the winter, plague or no plague. Before they leave, you give each of them a small pouch to wear around their necks. Inside are dried herbs, crushed garlic, and a small piece of parchment with a prayer written on it by the village priest. This is your medicine, your protection against plague. The sharp smell of garlic fills your nostrils as you tie the string around your son's neck. You don't know about antiseptic properties, about allicin compounds that might actually help fight infection. You know only that the wise woman said garlic keeps illness at bay, and those who wear it seem to fall ill less often. You also give them each a small cup of posset to drink, a mixture of ale, milk, and herbs steeped together. The ale was brewed last autumn. The milk comes from your single goat. The herbs are from your garden, what little grows in the hard-packed soil behind your cottage. Rosemary, sage, a bit of mint. You don't know about their medicinal properties specifically, but generations of women before you used these same herbs to treat all manner of ailments. The knowledge is in your bones, passed down without scientific explanation. Your husband drinks the posset in one swallow, his face revealing neither pleasure nor displeasure. It is medicine, not meant to be enjoyed. Your son does the same, though he makes a small face at the bitter taste. They leave without ceremony, taking the wooden hose leaning by the door. The tools are precious. The metal parts hammered and shaped by the village blacksmith, the handles carved from ash wood. They will return at midday for a brief meal, then work until dusk. This is the rhythm of peasant life, sunrise to sunset, planting and tending and harvesting. With the men gone, you turn to your own tasks. There is bread to bake. If the flour holds out, there is washing to do, though soap is a luxury you rarely have. Instead, you use wood ash lye, stinging your cracked hands as you scrub homespun wool and linen. There are younger children to watch, a home to maintain, perhaps herbs to gather if time allows. Your daughter, 9 summers old, helps with many tasks. She is learning as you learned, by doing, by watching, by the gentle corrections of experienced hands guiding her own. Before beginning the washing, you check on your neighbor, Widow Agnes. She lives alone since her husband died last winter. Not from plague, but from a fall while repairing his roof. You bring her a small bowl of porridge, calling softly before entering her cottage. The custom is important, both as respect and as caution. Those who are ill often prefer to suffer alone, not wanting to expose others. Agnes is sitting on her stool, spinning wool into thread. Her fingers move automatically, decades of practice making the task as natural as breathing. She nods thanks for the porridge, tells you that Martin the cooper's wife has fallen, ill. Another one? You both make the sign of the cross. Both mutter brief prayers. Neither of you says what you're thinking. Who will be next? Back at your cottage, you begin the washing. The stream runs behind several homes, and wash day brings women together. But with plague in the village, many keep to themselves. You find a spot away from others, downstream, from where drinking water is collected. The work is hard on your hands, especially in cool weather. The lye solution removes dirt, but also strips skin of natural oils. Your hands are perpetually red, cracked at the knuckles, nails worn, down to nothing. There is no hand cream, no moisturizer. Sometimes you rub a bit of animal fat into the worst cracks, but mostly you endure. Everyone's hands look like this. As you wash, you keep an eye on your younger children playing nearby. They are never far from sight. Childhood in medieval times is not a protected space of innocence and play. Children as young as 4 or 5 have chores, responsibilities. Your youngest, at 3, helps by carrying small sticks for the fire. The older ones, 5 and 7, watch the baby when you need both hands free. They also learn by observing the world around them, the insects in the grass, the birds overhead, the endless cycle of village life. Their education is practical, immediate. They will never learn to read or write, but they will know how to plant by the phases of the moon, how to predict weather by watching animals, how to survive in a world that offers no guarantees. The washing takes most of the morning. Your back aches from bending over the stream. Your hands are red and painful, but the clothes are cleaner, if not truly clean by modern standards. You hang them on bushes to dry, hoping the sun stays strong enough to dry them before evening. Dampness sets in. If not, they'll hang near the fire tonight, adding to the smoky atmosphere of your home. Midday approaches, and you return to prepare food for when your husband and son come in from the fields. Today's meal is a simple pottage, a thick soup made from whatever vegetables are available. Right now, that means mostly onions and the last of the dried peas from winter storage. Into the iron pot they go, along with water and a small piece of salt pork for flavor. The salt pork is used sparingly, a tiny amount to season many meals. Meat is not an everyday food for peasants, especially not in late summer before the autumn slaughtering. The pottage simmers, filling your home with its aroma. Your stomach growls in response. Morning porridge long since digested. Hunger is a familiar sensation. Not the desperate hunger of famine years, but the constant, low-level hunger of having just enough to survive, but rarely enough to feel truly satisfied. When plague threatens, you eat a little less, saving more for the days ahead when you might be too ill to work, or when the village might be avoided by traveling merchants bringing supplies. Your husband and son return from the fields, sweaty despite the moderate temperature. Their faces are weathered, tanned from constant exposure. Sunscreen doesn't exist, nor would peasants have time to apply it if it did. Their skin tells the story of their lives, lined early, calloused, marked by small scars from countless minor injuries that are part of agricultural work. They wash their hands in a bucket of water, a concession to cleanliness that has more to do with removing dirt than killing germs. Still, it's something. Those who wash more seem to stay healthier, though no one knows exactly why. The family eats together, dipping bread into the communal pot of pottage. Mealtime conversation is minimal, practical. Your husband mentions seeing riders on the road to the manor house, perhaps bringing news. Your son talks about a deer he spotted at the edge of the forest. Your daughter reports that the goat seems to be giving less milk. These observations matter. They shape decisions about the days ahead. Should you try to sell something at market if travelers are moving through the area again? Should your husband try to hunt the deer, risking punishment if caught poaching on the Lord's land? Should you use less milk in cooking if the goat's production is waning? After the meal, your husband and son return to the fields. You clean the pot with sand and water, scrubbing until it's reasonably free of food particles. Bacteria are unknown to you, but experience has taught that clean pots last longer and food tastes better when vessels are properly maintained. Nothing in your world is disposable. Everything must be cared for. The afternoon brings different tasks. You check your small garden, pulling weeds from around the herbs and vegetables. The soil is poor, but over years you've enriched it with kitchen scraps and animal manure. Your garden won't feed the family, but it supplements what's grown in the larger fields and provides the herbs needed for medicine and flavoring. You harvest some sage, hanging it in bundles from the rafters inside to dry. Fresh herbs are used when available. Dried ones sustain you through winter. While working in the garden, you notice your 5-year-old son feels warm when he comes to show you a beetle he's found. Your heart quickens. Your mouth goes dry with fear. Is it just from running in the sun, or the beginning of fever? You press your lips to his forehead, the peasant thermometer. He does feel warmer than he should. You send him inside to rest, telling your daughter to give him water. Inside, you prepare an infusion of willow bark, stripped from the tree growing near the stream. You don't know about salicylic acid, the compound in willow that reduces fever and pain, the precursor to aspirin. You know only that willow bark tea helps reduce fever, knowledge passed from mother to daughter for generations. The tea is bitter, and your son protests. You add a precious drop of honey, saved. For medicinal purposes, he drinks reluctantly, then lies on the straw mattress. You place a damp cloth on his forehead, watching his chest rise and fall. His breathing seems normal. No cough. No swellings visible on his neck or armpits, the telltale signs of plague. Perhaps it's nothing. Perhaps it's the beginning of something terrible. This uncertainty is the constant companion of medieval parenthood. Children die frequently from diseases that would be easily treated today. You've already buried 2, a newborn who never drew breath, a 2-year-old taken by a wasting illness 3 winters ago. Each loss carved hollows in your heart, but life continued because it must. You say a prayer to Saint Roch, patron of plague victims. You burn a sprig of rosemary near the bed, its aromatic smoke filling the room. The herb is associated with the Virgin Mary, believed to offer protection. These actions would seem superstitious to modern observers, but to you, they are medicine. The line between medical treatment and spiritual intervention doesn't exist. Both are appeals to higher powers to restore balance, to drive away the invisible forces causing harm. Your daughter takes over watching her brother while you return to necessary chores. The goat needs milking. Chickens need feeding with scattered grain and kitchen scraps. A precious egg is collected and carefully placed in the small basket hanging from a roof beam. Eggs are rarely eaten by your family, more valuable as trade items or saved for adding to special bread dough. Protein comes mostly from legumes, milk, and occasional meat. Your diet is predominantly carbohydrates from grains. Filling, but not particularly nutritious by modern standards. As you work, you keep glancing at your cottage, watching for any sign that your son's condition is worsening. Medieval parenting involves this constant risk calculation, this awareness that children are vulnerable in ways largely forgotten in modern developed nations. Every fever could be the beginning of something deadly. Every cough could be the first sign of a disease that will sweep through the family. There are no vaccines, no antibiotics, no emergency rooms. There is only watchful waiting, herbal remedies, and prayer. The sun begins its descent, the day cooling as afternoon fades toward evening. Your husband and son return from the fields, tired and hungry. You tell them about the younger boy's fever, and your husband's face shows the same fear you felt earlier. He goes immediately to check on his son, placing his own rough hand on the small forehead. The boy is sleeping, his breathing even. He seems no warmer than before. Perhaps the willow bark tea has helped. There's relief, but not complete. You'll watch through the night, taking turns, keeping vigil. Evening meal preparation begins. Tonight, it's a flatbread cooked on a hot stone near the fire, spread with a little goat cheese and wild garlic. The bread is made from barley flour, coarser and darker than wheat flour, which is often reserved for paying taxes to the Lord. The meal is simple but satisfying after a day of physical labor. You eat outside if weather permits, saving the smoky interior from additional cooking fumes. The family sits on logs or stones arranged near the cottage door, watching the village settle into evening rhythms. Smoke rises from other chimneys. Chickens are coaxed into coops to protect them from foxes. Voices call children home before darkness falls completely. After eating, there is still work to be done. Darkness doesn't end the peasant's day. It only changes the nature of tasks. Inside, by firelight, women continue spinning, mending, food processing. Men repair tools, carve useful objects, prepare seeds. Children help where they can or play quiet games with simple toys, a carved wooden animal, a cloth doll stuffed with straw, a game of knucklebones. Your family is somewhat subdued tonight, concerned about the young one's fever. He wakes briefly, seems better, takes a little bread soaked in milk before drifting back to sleep. Before full darkness, you visit the village wise woman, Agnes's sister, Martha. She lives at the edge of the village in a cottage similar to others but surrounded by carefully tended herb gardens. Martha is older than most villagers, past 50, her survival a testament to knowledge accumulated over decades. She's not a witch, though in some villages such women might be viewed with suspicion. Here, she's respected, consulted, a repository of practical medical knowledge passed down through generations of women. You bring her a small payment, the precious egg, collected earlier. She accepts with a nod, then listens to your description of your son's symptoms. Her gnarled fingers, swollen with what we would now call arthritis, sort through dried herbs hanging from her rafters. She selects several, mixing them in specific proportions. Feverfew for fever, chamomile for restfulness, a bit of mint to settle the stomach. These are prepared as a tea, the instructions delivered in pragmatic terms. Brew until the water turns color. Give twice before morning. Watch for sweating as the fever breaks. Martha also gives you practical advice that has nothing to do with herbs. Keep him cool but not cold. Give water frequently. Watch for unusual spots on the skin. This is empirical medicine, based on observation over centuries, not on understanding of underlying disease mechanisms. Some of it works, some doesn't. But it's the best available in a world without laboratories or clinical trials. Martha doesn't know why feverfew reduces fever. She knows only that it often does. You thank her and return home as the last light fades from the sky. The village is mostly dark now, except for the occasional glow of fires visible through doorways. There is no street lighting, no electricity. On moonless nights, the darkness is profound, disorienting to modern sensibilities. You navigate by memory, by the feel of the path beneath your feet, by the familiar sounds and smells of home. A dog barks somewhere in the distance, then falls silent. At home, you brew Martha's herbal mixture, the pungent smell filling the small space. Your son wakes enough to drink it, grimacing at the bitter taste. No amount of honey can fully mask the medicinal flavor of healing herbs. He drifts back to sleep while you and your husband discuss the day in low voices. The plague seems to have claimed no new victims today. Perhaps it's fading. Perhaps the prayers and processions led by the village priest are working. Perhaps the changing season will drive away the miasma, believed to carry disease. Night deepens. Your family settles for sleep. All on the shared mattress except for your feverish son, who's given space near the fire. Medieval sleep patterns differ from modern ones. Without artificial lighting, people tend to follow the sun, sleeping when it's dark, waking with the light. But sleep isn't always continuous. Many wake in the middle of the night for an hour or two, tending fires, checking on children, sometimes visiting neighbors also awake in the night hours. This segmented sleep feels natural in your world. The fire dies down to embers, casting a faint red glow across the dirt floor. The cottage creaks and settles. Outside, an owl calls. Then another answers. Your husband's breathing deepens as he falls asleep. Your older children already lost to dreams. You remain awake, watching your sick child, periodically checking his forehead with your lips. The fever seems no worse, perhaps slightly improved. Relief washes through you, though you know morning might bring different news. As you sit in the near darkness, your mind doesn't wander to abstract concerns or distant worries. Medieval consciousness is present, focused by necessity. You think of practical matters, whether the grain storage will last, whether the Lord will demand the usual tribute despite the plague affecting workers, whether your winter stores of preserved foods will be sufficient. You don't worry about retirement or career advancement or global issues. Your world is immediate, local, defined by the changing seasons and the need to survive each one as it comes. Your sick son stirs, whimpering slightly in his sleep. You dampen another cloth, place it on his forehead. He settles, breathing evenly again. This is medicine in the Middle Ages. Attentive care, herbal remedies of varying effectiveness, and constant vigilance. Without understanding the causes of disease, prevention focuses on what can be observed. People who are cleaner seem to fare better, so you wash when you can. People who use certain herbs seem to recover more often, so you use them faithfully. Cause and effect are noted even when the mechanism remains mysterious. Eventually, you sleep. You're back against the wall near your son. Sleep comes despite worry, because the body demands it after a day of physical labor. There are no adjustable beds, no memory foam pillows. Your neck will ache in the morning from the awkward position. But such discomfort is as much a part of life as the changing seasons. The body adapts, endures, continues. You wake several times to check your son, to add wood to the fire, to listen for unusual sounds that might signal danger or distress. This hypervigilance is normal for peasant parents, especially during times of illness. Modern parents might recognize the feeling, but not the constant, underlying knowledge that simple diseases frequently kill children in your world. Dawn approaches, faint gray light seeping through the cracks around your door. Your son's fever broke during the night, his small body now cool and damp with sweat. Relief floods through you, though you know one crisis past doesn't mean lasting safety. Still, for this moment, there is gratitude. You thank God, St. Roch, the herbs, Martha's wisdom. Whatever combination of forces came together to spare your child this time. The morning routine begins again, indistinguishable from yesterday's. The fire is built up, porridge is prepared. The family stirs with the growing light. Your formerly feverish son is weak but hungry, a good sign. He'll stay home today rather than helping with chores, given a rare day of rest to regain strength. Your husband and oldest son prepare for the fields again, another day of agricultural labor that will leave them bone-tired by dusk. The cycle continues because it must. As they leave, a bell begins to toll from the village church. Not the regular morning bell, but the slower, solitary toll that announces a death. 1, 2, 3. The count continues. Everyone pauses, listening, counting. Medieval villages track deaths this way. The bell giving public voice to private grief. The tolling stops at 20. a woman. Then, the bell rings the age of the departed, helping villagers identify who might have died in the night. You and your husband exchange glances, mentally reviewing who might be the one. Martha, the cooper's wife? Probably. She had fallen ill with plague symptoms 2 days ago. Your husband crosses himself, as do you and your children old enough to understand the gesture. Another one taken. Another family facing the raw emptiness of loss. There will be a burial today, attended by all who aren't ill themselves. The grave already dug by the men of the village, taking turns with the shovel in the corner of the churchyard, increasingly crowded with fresh mounds of earth. No embalming, no funeral home. Just the body wrapped in a shroud made from the family's best piece of cloth, lowered into the ground as the priest speaks Latin words. Few understand, but all respect. But first, there is a day of work ahead. The living must continue their labors, especially with plague reducing the number of hands available. Your husband and son leave for the fields, their expression somber after the bell's announcement. You return to your chores, washing your son's sweat-soaked bedding in the stream, preparing food, tending animals. Life and death exist side by side in medieval villages, neither given undue prominence over the other. Death is not hidden away, not medicalized and distanced as in modern times. It is present, visible, acknowledged as part of the village fabric. Mid-morning brings the funeral procession past your cottage. Martin the cooper supports his daughter, their faces hollow with grief. Behind them, 4 men carry his wife's shrouded body on a simple wooden plank. The priest walks ahead, reading from his prayer book. Villagers join the procession as it passes until nearly everyone follows toward the churchyard. You join too. Your daughter beside you. Your sons remaining home. The youngest still recovering. The oldest watching the smaller ones. The burial is brief by modern standards. No eulogy celebrates the woman's life, though everyone present knows her story. Born in the village 39 years ago, married at 16, mother to 6 living children and 4 who died young, skilled at brewing and needlework, known for her laugh that carried across the village green. The priest speaks the required prayers. Her body is lowered into the earth. Her husband throws the first handful of soil onto the shroud. Then others help fill the grave. The practical task of burial is shared by the community, as all survival tasks are shared. Someone has brought bread to share afterward, dark and dense, broken into pieces and distributed among mourners. A simple wake, a recognition of continued life. By noon, the village returns to its labors. Death doesn't pause the medieval workday for long. Can't be afforded that power when survival margins are so thin. You return to your interrupted chores. Your sick son now sitting outside in the mild sunshine, regaining strength. The fear of plague hangs over the village. But today, at least, your immediate family has been spared. Others haven't been so fortunate. The empty cottages on the village edge testify to entire families taken, their possessions already redistributed among survivors, their livestock absorbed into others' meager herds. Medieval pragmatism doesn't permit resources to remain unused when needs are ever present. Afternoon brings a visitor to the village, a friar from the monastery half a day's journey away. His brown robe is dusty from travel, his feet bare despite the rough roads. He brings news. Other villages are suffering worse from the plague. In some, half the population has died. He carries a pouch of medicines prepared by the monastery herbalist, distributing small amounts to those who seem most in need. You receive a packet of powdered herbs to mix with honey, both for your recovering son and as prevention for others. The friar doesn't know if these will work. No one does. but they represent the best medical knowledge available. The friar also brings spiritual medicine, hearing confessions in the churchyard, offering blessings to houses marked by illness. Medieval medicine makes no distinction between body and soul. Both require attention during disease. The friar speaks of the plague as divine punishment, but also offers practical advice about cleanliness and care for the ill. These are not contradictory in the medieval mind. God works through both divine intervention and natural remedies provided by creation. You listen respectfully, accepting both the herbs and the blessings. In a world of limited medical options, nothing helpful is rejected. Evening approaches. Again, your husband and son return from the fields. Your household gathers for another simple meal. Tonight there's a bit of dried fish added to the pottage, purchased months ago from a traveling merchant and saved for times when extra nourishment seems necessary. The protein is welcome after days of mostly grain-based meals. Everyone eats slowly, savoring the unusual flavor. Your son, who was sick, eats heartily. Another sign of recovery that eases your mind. After the meal, a neighbor stops by. His wife remains ill with what might be plague, or might be another fever. He's come to ask about the willow bark tea that helped your son. You measure a handful of dried bark into a cloth. Explain the preparation. Offer what comfort you can with your limited knowledge. This is how medical information travels in villages. Neighbor to neighbor, observation to application, without books or formal training. Empirical results are the primary teacher. What worked for one child might help another, or might not. But it must be tried when few options exist. Darkness falls again. Your family prepares for sleep, the rhythm of the day closing as it always does. Tomorrow will bring the same chores, the same concerns, perhaps new challenges or developments in the village's plague situation. Medieval life doesn't lend itself to long-term planning or significant changes in daily routine. The seasons dictate the work. The daylight dictates the schedule. Within these constraints, you find what security is possible through community, through shared knowledge, through the accumulated wisdom of generations observing what helps and what harms. You check your recovering son one last time before settling onto the straw mattress alongside your family. His forehead is cool, his breathing regular. One crisis past, though others surely wait in the future. This is the reality of raising children in medieval times. Constant vigilance, constant awareness of how quickly health can turn to illness, life to death. Yet there is also deep appreciation for each day survived, each season successfully navigated, each child who grows to adulthood despite the countless threats along the way. As the cottage grows quiet, save for the occasional pop of the fire's embers, you review the day's events in your mind. One villager lost to plague. Your own son recovered from what might have been the beginning of something worse. The friar's visit, the shared burial, the neighbor seeking advice. These small moments compose medieval life, immediate, practical, focused on survival rather than advancement or improvement as modern people understand those concepts. Your world is not about progress, but about continuation, about maintaining what works, about passing knowledge to the next generation so they too might survive. Sleep comes, as it always does, claiming you despite the hard mattress, despite the worry that never fully dissipates. Your body requires rest to face tomorrow's labor. Your mind surrenders to darkness. Medieval sleep is different from modern sleep. Deeper in some ways because of the physical exhaustion that comes with constant manual labor. More fragmented because of discomfort and the need to maintain fires or attend to children. There are no sleep aids beyond exhaustion. Perhaps a cup of chamomile tea if the plant grew well this season. Morning arrives. as it always does. Another day in a medieval village during plague time. Your son, who was sick yesterday, seems fully recovered, a testament to his youth, and whatever combination of care, herbs, and luck came together in his favor. He returns to his chores, though more slowly than usual. Your family follows the rhythm established over generations, rising with the sun, working with the daylight, resting in darkness. The plague may take some, may spare others. But the fundamental patterns of peasant life continue, because survival depends on these patterns, on the knowledge embedded in them. The village bell rings again. Not the death toll this time, but the regular morning bell calling people to brief prayers before the day's work begins. Not everyone attends daily. The fields can't wait. But someone from most households goes to represent the family. You send your daughter today, your own chores pressing after yesterday's interruptions. She walks the short distance to the small stone church that marks the village center, joining others from households nearby. The priest will speak Latin words, make familiar gestures. The villagers will respond with memorized sounds, the meanings less important than the ritual itself, the connection to something beyond daily survival. While she's gone, you prepare a preventative infusion for your family. Garlic, thyme, a bit of the powder the friar left. Medieval disease prevention focuses on strengthening the body's resistance rather than directly fighting unknown pathogens. The humero, theory that guides medical thought, suggests that disease comes from imbalance, so preventative measures aim to maintain balance through diet, herbal preparations, and avoidance of miasma or bad air believed to carry illness. Some of these approaches accidentally work. Garlic does have antimicrobial properties, but the underlying theory misunderstands the actual mechanisms of disease transmission. Your daughter returns from church with news. The priest announced another village 5 miles distant has been heavily affected by plague. Several families there sought refuge in the forest, living in temporary shelters away from others. This method sometimes works, isolation being an effective, if poorly understood, defense against contagion. But forest living brings other dangers: exposure, wild animals, difficulty obtaining food. Medieval people make these calculations constantly, weighing known risks against unknown ones, immediate dangers against potential future threats. The day unfolds like countless others before it. Your hands perform tasks they've done thousands of times, muscle memory guiding movements so familiar they require little conscious thought. Kneading dough, feeding animals, sorting dried herbs, mending clothing. These activities form the backbone of peasant life, necessary for survival, unchanged for generations. Innovation is rare in medieval villages. Risks of failure too high when margins are so thin. What worked for your grandmother works for you, will work for your daughter. Change comes slowly, if at all. Midday brings unexpected excitement. A cart arrives in the village. A merchant braver than most, willing to trade despite the plague. Word spreads quickly. Villagers gather with whatever they have to offer: eggs, handicrafts, small amounts of grain or cheese. The merchant has salt, needles, thread, a few simple medicines, iron tools, luxuries by medieval standards. You bring 2 precious eggs and a small cheese, hoping to obtain a new needle to replace one broken last winter. The transaction is quick, silent. The merchant clearly fears lingering too long where plague has been reported. He accepts your offering, hands over the needle wrapped in a scrap of cloth. The small piece of shaped metal represents hours of specialized labor, far beyond the capability of village craftsmen to produce. It will be used carefully, protected, valued. The merchant leaves before completing all possible trades. his nervousness about plague exposure overcoming his desire for profit. Those who didn't manage to barter with him watched the cart depart with disappointment, but no complaint. Medieval expectations are modest. Disappointment a regular feature of life. There will be other merchants, or there won't. Plans must remain flexible, adaptable to whatever circumstances arise. Afternoon brings clouds, the possibility of rain. Your husband and son return early from the fields, helping to secure anything that might be damaged. By water, the harvest is still weeks away, but heavy rain now could damage ripening grain, could cause rot or mold. Weather is not merely an inconvenience in medieval life, but a defining force that shapes survival possibilities. A strong storm at the wrong time can mean hunger in winter, no matter how carefully the crops were tended before. The rain arrives, gentle at first, then steadier. Your family gathers inside the cottage, a rare moment when everyone is home during daylight hours. The enforced idleness creates space for activities often reserved for winter evenings. Your husband carves, a small wooden toy for the youngest child. Your oldest son practices with the bow he's made from flexible yew, aiming at a target painted on the door. Your daughter continues the endless task of spinning wool into thread, her fingers becoming more skilled with each passing month. You sort through dried herbs hanging from the rafters, separating those still useful from those that have lost potency over time. These quiet domestic scenes punctuate the otherwise relentless physical labor of medieval life. They provide opportunities for teaching, for passing skills from one generation to the next. Your daughter watches your herb sorting with careful attention, asking questions about which plants serve, which purposes. Your younger son observes his father's carving, absorbing techniques he'll use himself in years to come. Knowledge transfers this way, directly, practically, without books or formal education. The survival skills accumulated over centuries move from hand to hand, mouth to ear. The rain continues through evening, drumming on the thatch roof, occasionally finding its way through to drip in corners of the cottage. Your family stays inside, eating bread and cheese rather than cooking over the fire. The smoky interior becomes more noticeable when everyone remains inside for hours, but the discomfort is familiar, unremarkable by medieval standards. You place vessels to catch the worst leaks, making mental note that the roof will need attention before winter. Another task for your already full days. Night falls earlier than usual due to heavy clouds. Your family settles for sleep to the sound of rain. A somehow comforting backdrop despite the problems it might create tomorrow. Medieval sleep comes easily after days of physical labor, the body demanding rest regardless of circumstance. Modern insomnia, the product of artificial light and sedentary lifestyles, is largely unknown. When darkness falls and work becomes impossible, sleep follows naturally for most. Morning brings clearing skies and the news of another death. Not from plague this time, but from age. Old Thomas, past 60 and considered ancient by village standards, died in his sleep. His daughter found him when bringing his morning porridge. The bell tolls 62 times, marking his unusually long life. The village receives this news differently than plague deaths. An elder dying of age is natural, expected, part of the proper order. There is sadness, especially for his family, but not the fear that accompanies plague victims. Old Thomas will be buried today. Another procession, another grave in the churchyard. But first, there is work to catch up on after yesterday's rain. The fields need attention. Animals need tending. Daily survival tasks must continue. Medieval life allows little time for extended mourning. The practical demands of staying alive take precedence over emotional expression. Grief happens alongside labor, incorporated into the daily routine rather than separated from it. Your family disperses to their tasks after a breakfast of porridge and dried apple preserved from last autumn's harvest. The plague seems to have claimed no new victims overnight. Perhaps it's truly fading from the village. Relief mingles with continued vigilance. No one believes the danger has fully passed. Medieval disease outbreaks often follow patterns, waxing and waning, sometimes returning just when people believe they've escaped. You spend the morning harvesting late summer vegetables from your small garden, beans and squash that will be dried for winter use. Food preservation occupies much of a peasant woman's time during harvest seasons, ensuring winter survival when fresh food becomes scarce. You have no freezer, no canning jars. Instead, you rely on drying, smoking, salting, fermenting. These preservation methods have evolved over centuries through trial and error. The successful techniques passed down while failed experiments were abandoned. The beans will be dried on racks in the sun, then stored in cloth bags hung from rafters to protect them from mice. The squash has thicker skin, will keep for months in a cool, dry corner of your cottage. Nothing edible is wasted. Even vegetable scraps feed animals or enrich garden. E-soil. This interlocking system of use and reuse, developed over generations of subsistence living, creates efficiency modern people might admire but would struggle to maintain. Midday brings Old Thomas's funeral. Most villagers attend, paying respects to a man who lived through famines, wars, and previous plague outbreaks. His knowledge dies with him, the accumulated wisdom of 6 decades observing weather patterns, crop rotations, animal husbandry. Medieval societies have no systematic way to preserve such knowledge beyond direct transmission to younger generations. What Thomas didn't manage to teach others before his death is simply lost, replaced by the observations and experiences of those who survive him. The funeral follows the same pattern as all village burials: the priest's Latin prayers, the family's grief, the community's support through shared labor of grave digging and filling. But there's a different atmosphere than at plague funerals. A celebration of longevity rather than mourning of untimely death. Old Thomas's daughter distributes small pieces of bread and cups of ale. A modest funeral feast honoring a life that extended far beyond average expectations. People share stories of his youth, his weather predictions, his skill at grafting fruit trees. This oral remembrance is the closest thing to immortality medieval peasants can expect, the carrying forward of their name and deeds in village memory. Afternoon returns everyone to work. The fields won't tend themselves. Animals won't feed themselves. Winter preparations won't complete themselves. Medieval life permits few holidays, few breaks from the constant labor of survival. Even Sundays, nominally reserved for worship, involve necessary chores. Animals must be fed. Milk must be collected. Fires must be maintained. The work cycle never fully stops because survival needs never fully pause. Your oldest son returns from the fields with news. A wolf was spotted near the village sheep pasture. The shepherd boy climbed a tree until it left. Medieval dangers aren't limited to disease and hunger. Predators, both animal and human, threaten survival from outside the community. Wolves take livestock, occasionally children. Bandits take stored food, tools, livestock. These external threats cement village cooperation, mutual protection being as important as shared labor. Tonight, several men will take turns watching the sheep, armed with bows and spears. Your husband volunteers for the midnight shift. Evening meal is again simple but sufficient. Bread and pottage with the last of the fresh beans from your garden. Everyone eats quickly, tired from the day's labor. Conversation focuses on practical matters. The wolf sighting. Old Thomas's burial. whether the miller will finish grinding the village grain before the stream runs too low to turn his wheel. Medieval conversation rarely strays into abstraction or distant concerns. The topics that matter are immediate, local, related to survival and community function. Your husband prepares for his night watch, checking the bull he rarely uses but maintains carefully. The weapon is precious, the product of specialized knowledge. The bow itself, the string, the arrows, all represent hours of careful work using techniques refined over generations. He won't shoot unless necessary. Wolves are dangerous but also plentiful. Killing one won't eliminate the threat, might even bring the pack seeking revenge, but might discourage them from approaching the sheep again. These calculations, these risk assessments, happen constantly in medieval life. Night falls, your husband leaves for his watch. Your children settle on the straw mattress. You remain awake longer. Finishing the spinning, your daughter started earlier. The thin thread will eventually become cloth, woven on the village loom that families share. From sheep to clothing, the process takes months of intermittent labor: carding, spinning, weaving, cutting, sewing. The resulting garment will be worn for years, patched, altered, eventually cut down for children's clothing, finally used as rags or stuffing when no longer wearable. The complete life cycle of objects extends far beyond modern expectations. Sleep comes later than usual, your mind alert to the absence of your husband, the potential threat beyond village boundaries. Medieval safety is always relative, always tentative. Walls can be breached, illness can spread, weather can destroy crops. Security comes not from elimination of threats, but from community response to them. Shared watchfulness, shared labor, shared resources when individual supplies fail. Your family is part of this system, sometimes giving help, sometimes receiving it. The balance shifts with circumstances, but the underlying structure remains. Morning arrives with good news. No wolves approached during the night. No sheep were lost. Your husband returns tired but relieved, sleeping briefly before returning to field work. The day begins its familiar pattern: fire, food, division of labor. Your son, who was sick days ago, is fully recovered, nothing remaining of the fever that caused such fear. Medieval recoveries happen this way. Illness either resolves or kills. There is rarely middle ground, rarely chronic conditions managed over years as in modern medicine. The body heals, itself or doesn't. The village has seen no new plague cases for 3 days. Cautious optimism spreads, though experience teaches that disease can return when least expected. Still, people begin to behave normally again, visiting neighbors, gathering at the well to draw water together rather than separately. Social connections resume, the invisible threads that bind community reforming after the temporary isolation of plague time. These connections matter as much as physical supplies for medieval survival, the support system that ensures no family faces hardship completely alone. Your day follows the established pattern of women's work: cooking, cleaning, food preservation, child supervision, handicrafts. The season is shifting toward harvest. Vegetable gardens offering their final yields before autumn frosts. You gather the last herbs that will dry effectively, leaving others to go to seed for next year's planting. The cycles of growth and dormancy shape your labor, dictate your activities more absolutely than any human authority. Nature's rhythms cannot be ignored when survival depends directly on them. Midday brings an unexpected visitor. A young monk travels through the village, updating the monastery's records of births, deaths, and marriages. These records serve both religious and practical purposes, helping track family relationships, property rights, tax obligations. The monk speaks with the priest first, copying information from parish records. Then he visits individual households, confirming details, noting changes. Your family receives him briefly, verifying the names and approximate ages of your children. The monk makes marks in his book, the written documentation of lives otherwise recorded only in memory and oral tradition. Most villagers cannot read or write, have no need for these skills in daily life. Information transfers orally, visually, through demonstration rather than text. But the church and nobility maintain written records, creating the documentary trail that allows modern historians glimpses into medieval life. Your family's existence will be noted in monastery archives, brief mentions of births, marriages, deaths, not the daily reality of survival, not the texture of your experiences, but the basic outlines of your place in the medieval world. Afternoon continues the cycle of necessary work. You begin preparing dried apple rings, slicing fruit thinly, arranging it on racks to dry in the late summer sun. The process will take days, the racks brought in at night and during rain, put out again when conditions allow. The resulting dried fruit will provide vital nutrition during winter months when fresh produce is unavailable. The natural sugars concentrate during drying, creating a sweet treat that children especially appreciate during the lean season between stored food running low and new growth beginning. Your husband and oldest son return from the fields earlier than usual. News has spread that a wild boar was spotted in the forest edge, a potential source of meat if it can be hunted successfully. Several village men plan to hunt tomorrow, your husband among them. The risk is significant. Wild boars are dangerous, capable of killing humans with their tusks, but the potential reward is equally significant. Meat to smoke and preserve, fat for cooking and making soap, skin for leather. Medieval risk calculations always balance immediate danger against survival needs, the possibility of injury against the certainty of hunger. Evening brings preparations for tomorrow's hunt. Your husband checks his spear, the only weapon effective against boar. The iron tip was costly, obtained years ago in trade for a quarter of your grain harvest. It's been carefully maintained, kept sharp, the wooden shaft regularly checked for cracks or weakness. Medieval tools represent significant investment, their maintenance as important as their acquisition. A broken tool can mean hunger, a failed harvest, vulnerability to predators. Your husband works methodically, testing the spear's balance, its strength, ensuring it won't fail at a critical moment tomorrow. The children watch with interest, especially the boys. They're learning, absorbing knowledge about weapons, hunting, the assessment of risks and rewards. Your oldest will join such hunts within a year or two, graduating from fieldwork and household chores to the more dangerous but potentially more rewarding activity of hunting. Medieval childhood transitions, gradually to adulthood through increasing responsibility and risk, not through arbitrary age milestones. When a boy can contribute to hunting, he hunts. When a girl can manage household tasks, she manages them. Capability determines role more than chronological age. Night falls on a village cautiously recovering from plague, preparing for both routine survival tasks and the potential opportunity of the boar hunt. Your family settles on the shared mattress, sleep coming quickly after the day's labor. Medieval sleep patterns align with natural light, with physical exhaustion, with the body's need for recovery before another day of manual work. Modern sleep disorders, the products of artificial light and reduced physical activity, are largely unknown. When darkness comes and the body is tired from labor, sleep follows naturally for most. Morning arrives with excitement underlying the usual routines. The men preparing to hunt gather at the village edge, carrying spears, a few bows, one net patched many times. Dogs trained for hunting accompany them, alert and eager. The hunting party includes most able-bodied men not required for essential tasks that can't wait. Medieval villages operate this way, fluidly allocating human resources according to opportunity and need. When a boar might be taken, fields can wait a day. When harvest is critical, hunting waits. The calculations happen constantly, adjustments made based on weather, timing, available labor. The hunters leave, women and children watching them go with mixed emotions. Hunting brings both opportunity and danger, the possibility of meat and the possibility of injury or death. No one speaks of fear. The risk is understood, accepted as part of survival. Medieval emotions aren't suppressed so much as integrated into the practical reality of daily life. Fear exists alongside necessity, worry alongside hope. These emotional states don't require special acknowledgement because they're universal. Constant companions in a world where survival margins are thin. With the men gone. The village. Routine shifts. Women handle tasks usually done by men. Children take on responsibilities beyond their usual ones. This flexibility characterizes medieval village life, roles less rigidly defined than later historical periods would make them. When necessity demands, women plow and men cook. Survival depends on adaptability, on everyone contributing whatever labor-specific circumstances require. The division of labor exists as a general efficiency pattern, not an absolute rule that threatens survival when circumstances change. You spend the morning checking food preservation in progress, turning drying fruit, packing dried beans into storage containers, assessing how much more needs to be preserved before winter. These calculations happen without writing, without formal inventory systems. Medieval memory serves as record-keeping, trained by necessity to track quantities, to estimate duration, to plan consumption rates that will stretch supplies until new growth begins. This mental accounting governs daily decisions about how much to eat, how much to save, how much to trade. Midday brings the sound of dogs barking, excited voices approaching the village. The hunters return sooner than expected. 4. Men carrying a large boar suspended from a pole. Their success is evident, their excitement infectious. The entire village gathers to see the rare bounty, to hear the story of the hunt. Your husband stands among the hunters, tired but unhurt. His spear shows blood on its tip, indicating his active role in the kill. Pride is visible in his stance, in the way the other hunters include him in their animated retelling of the confrontation. Medieval emotions may be practically focused, but they're not absent. Achievement, belonging, contribution to community welfare. These generate real satisfaction transcending mere survival. The boar is huge, perhaps 200 pounds. Butchering begins immediately, too significant a task to delay. The village has no dedicated butcher, but several men have experience from slaughtering domestic animals. They work systematically, first bleeding the carcass, then removing internal organs, separating those immediately edible from those used for other purposes. Medieval butchery wastes nothing. The blood collected for sausage, the organs sorted according to use, the intestines cleaned for sausage casings. Children watch with interest rather than disgust, their understanding of meat's origin unclouded by modern disconnection from food sources. Women prepare for processing the various parts, bringing containers for blood, salt for preservation, herbs for sausage making. The work will continue through the day and into evening, many hands making the labor manageable. This cooperative processing characterizes medieval village life when windfalls occur. Individual households lack the capacity to utilize such abundance alone. Sharing both the work and the results benefits everyone. Your family will receive a portion of meat proportional to your husband's contribution to the hunt, a share of a resource obtained through collective effort. The actual distribution happens as butchering progresses. The chief hunter, who first spotted the boar and organized the hunt, receives the choice cuts and the head. Others receive portions based on their contribution, their need, their status in the village hierarchy. This distribution isn't negotiated explicitly. It follows patterns established over generations, modified by specific circumstances but fundamentally stable. Medieval social systems operate through these understood allocations, these recognized rights and obligations that rarely require explicit discussion. Your portion is significant. Several pounds of meat, some organ meat, a length of intestine for sausage making, a share of fat for rendering. This represents protein and calories far beyond what your family normally consumes. A windfall that will improve nutrition for weeks if properly preserved. The work of preservation begins immediately. Some meat sliced thinly for smoking, some packed in salt, some mixed with fat and herbs for immediate cooking. Medieval food preservation requires quick action, especially in warm weather when spoilage happens rapidly. Evening brings a rare village celebration. Small portions of the boar are cooked immediately, shared among all households including those whose men didn't participate in the hunt. The elderly, the ill, families with many children, all receive something even if they contributed nothing to the hunting effort. This distribution beyond strict contribution acknowledges the community's shared survival. The understanding that today's recipients might be tomorrow's providers. Medieval village life balances individual household interest against collective welfare, recognizing that community survival ultimately protects individual survival. The fresh meat is unfamiliar in your mouth after weeks of grain-based diet. The rich fat, the dense protein, the intense flavor, all remind your body of what it's been missing. Medieval nutrition fluctuates dramatically with seasons, with hunting success, with harvest quality. Bodies adapt to these fluctuations, but crave what they lack. Your children eat enthusiastically, instinctively recognizing the value of what's rarely available, even the youngest. Too small to understand hunting or nutrition, reaches eagerly for the unfamiliar food that her body somehow knows it needs. Night brings tired satisfaction to the village. The day's unexpected bounty has been processed, preserved, partially shared. Tomorrow will bring regular work again, fields requiring attention despite today's hunting success. The routine of medieval life bends for special circumstances but never breaks entirely. Survival depends on constant attention to crops, animals, food preservation. Regardless of occasional windfalls, your family sleeps deeply. Bellies fuller than usual. A rare physical contentment underlying the familiar exhaustion. Morning returns the village to its regular rhythm. Men return to fields, women to household tasks, children to their age-appropriate chores. But there's a lingering satisfaction from yesterday's success. A psychological boost that makes labor seem lighter. Medieval emotional life includes these moments of collective achievement, these shared experiences that strengthen community, bonds beyond mere practical cooperation. The hunt becomes part of village memory, retold in future evenings, its details gradually embellished with repeated telling. Your family's portion of boar meat hangs smoking over a small fire behind your cottage, the smoke flavoring the meat while helping preserve it. The process will take days, the fire maintained at just the right temperature, the meat turned periodically for even drying. This smoking technique, developed over centuries through trial and error, extends the usable life of meat from days to months. The smoke contains compounds that naturally inhibit bacterial growth, though medieval people understand the process only through observed results rather than chemical explanation. The village has now gone 5 days without new plague cases. The crisis seems truly past, though experience teaches caution before declaring complete victory over disease. Medieval disease understanding lacks germ theory, lacks epidemiological tracking, but generations of observation have taught that illness can appear dormant before resurging. Still, 5 days brings legitimate hope, tentative relief. People resume normal interactions, normal activities, the isolation of plague time giving way to the usual social connections that make village life not merely survivable, but occasionally pleasurable. Your day follows the established pattern of late summer tasks: harvesting, preserving, preparing for colder seasons ahead. The work is demanding but familiar. Your hands performing actions they've done countless times before. Medieval technical knowledge is embodied, stored in muscle memory as much as conscious understanding. You don't follow recipes for food preservation. Don't consult manuals for cloth making. These skills live in your movements, in the way your fingers pinch dough or twist thread. Knowledge transferred directly from your mother's hands to your own through years of observation and practice. Midday brings news from a passing traveler. The plague has devastated larger towns to the east, killing half or more of some populations. Your isolated village, with limited outside contact, has suffered relatively less. This pattern occurs repeatedly throughout medieval plague outbreaks. Isolated communities often faring better than densely populated areas or those on major trade routes. The traveler shares this information while maintaining careful distance from villagers, accepting food left for him rather than taking it directly from hands. Experience has taught caution during plague times, even when local cases seem to have subsided. The plague news subdues the village briefly, reminder of how fortune has relatively favored your community. The bell has tolled for 8 plague victims in total, about 1/8 of the village population. Tragic by modern standards, catastrophic for the families directly affected, but modest compared to losses. Elsewhere, medieval reactions to such news balance gratitude for relative safety against awareness that circumstances could change, that the next outbreak might affect your village more severely. Fortune is recognized but not trusted. Appreciation tempered by constant vigilance. Late afternoon brings your husband and son from the fields with wild herbs gathered on their return journey. They found plantain and yarrow growing along the path, useful medicinal plants worth collecting when encountered. Medieval plant knowledge is widespread, not limited to specialists. Most adults recognize valuable species, understand basic medicinal properties, harvest opportunistically when plants are spotted during other activities. This distributed knowledge ensures medical resources remain available even when designated healers fall ill or die. The community's collective understanding preserving essential information across generations. You accept the plants with appreciation, hanging them from rafters to dry alongside other medicinal herbs. Your cottage's ceiling is crowded with hanging bundles, each representing potential treatment for common ailments. Medieval medicine works with what's available locally. What can be grown, gathered, stored? There are no pharmacies, no standardized medications. Each household maintains its own medical supply, supplemented by the more extensive collections of village healers like Martha. The system lacks precision, but provides accessible treatments for many common conditions, especially when combined with practical care techniques developed through observation over generations. Evening brings neighboring families together for shared processing of the day's garden harvests. Women gather with vegetables needing immediate attention: beans to shell, corn to husk. The work goes faster with many hands, conversation making repetitive tasks less tedious. This practical socialization characterizes medieval village life, people connecting through shared work rather than dedicated leisure activities. Information exchanges during these sessions, news, concerns, practical advice. Children play nearby, absorbing both technical skills and social norms through observation. The entire scene embodies medieval knowledge transfer, practical, social, integrated into necessary activities rather than separated into formal education. The conversation turns to winter preparations, assessments of food stores, predictions about weather patterns. Everyone has observed signs. Bird migrations beginning earlier than usual, squirrels gathering nuts with unusual intensity, caterpillars with particularly thick coats. These observations fuel predictions about the coming winter's severity, guide decisions about how much food to preserve, how much firewood to gather. Medieval weather forecasting relies on such natural indicators, on patterns observed over generations and passed through oral tradition. There is genuine meteorological wisdom in these observations, correlations noticed through centuries of careful attention to natural cycles. Night falls on the working group. Lanterns and candles lighting continued activity as darkness makes garden work impossible. Precious tallow candles and oil lamps are used sparingly, their light focused on the work at hand rather than general illumination. Medieval lighting emphasizes practicality, sufficiency rather than abundance. The expensive fuels that produce light are allocated to necessary tasks, conserved when natural daylight is available, eliminated entirely when sleep is the appropriate activity. This careful resource management extends to all aspects of medieval life, using exactly what's needed, storing what can be preserved, wasting nothing that might later prove valuable. Eventually, the work concludes. Families return to their respective cottages, your own children settling onto the straw mattress with the familiar exhaustion of days filled with physical activity. Medieval childhood includes far more labor and far less play than modern childhoods, but the work is generally appropriate to age and ability. The expectation of contribution balanced by genuine affection and protection. Children are valued both emotionally and practically, their survival representing both personal attachment and future security for parents who will eventually need care themselves. You and your husband remain awake longer, checking the smoking meat, discussing tomorrow's necessary tasks. Medieval marriages function as practical partnerships first, emotional connections developing through shared survival challenges rather than romantic idealization. Your conversations focus on immediate concerns: weather, livestock, children's health, food supplies. These pragmatic exchanges reflect the reality of lives defined by survival needs, the luxury of abstract discussion or personal reflection, rarely available when physical demands consume most waking hours. Sleep claims you both eventually, your body demanding rest after another day of constant activity. The smoky interior of your cottage, the hard surface beneath your sleeping bodies, the ambient sounds of animals and family members, all would seem challenging to modern sleepers accustomed to quiet, climate control, comfortable mattresses, but medieval bodies adapt to these conditions, find rest despite them. Sleep comes as it has for countless nights before, will come for countless nights ahead if fortune allows. Morning arrives with the familiar pattern of early rising, fire building, simple food preparation. Your son, who recovered from fever days ago, shows no lingering effects, his young body resilient in ways older ones aren't. Medieval children who survive early illnesses often develop robust immune responses, their systems challenged early and frequently. Those who reach adulthood have typically overcome numerous infections. their survival representing successful adaptation to the microbial challenges of their environment, not through medical intervention, but through the body's natural defenses, strengthened through repeated exposure. The village continues its tentative return to normal routines as plague danger recedes. The rhythm of medieval life reasserts itself. The cycle of daily tasks, weekly observations, seasonal preparations. There is comfort in this rhythm, security in its predictability. Despite hardships, despite dangers both seen and unseen, the pattern provides structure, purpose, connection to generations past and future. Your family moves within this pattern, contributing to its continuation, finding place and meaning in the shared work of survival. The sun rises higher. Another day of medieval life unfolding. The plague that threatened has diminished but not disappeared entirely. May return in future seasons as it has in the past. Other challenges wait on the horizon. Winter cold, possible food shortages, predators both animal and human. But today there is work to do. Food to preserve, animals to tend, fields to harvest. The immediate demands of survival focus attention on what can be controlled, what can be accomplished, what can be prepared. Medieval resilience isn't about eliminating threats, but about continuing despite them. He's adapting to conditions as they exist, rather than as they might ideally be. And so the cycle continues. Day following day, season following season. Medieval peasants survive without modern medicine, through practical knowledge accumulated over generations, through community support, through herbal remedies of varying effectiveness, through careful hygiene within the limits of available resources, through isolation when necessary, through prayer and ritual that provide psychological comfort, if not physical cure. They survive because human bodies are remarkably resilient, because knowledge passes from hand to hand even without written documentation, because communities collectively preserve what individuals alone could not. The story of medieval survival is not one of triumph over disease, not one of medical breakthrough or scientific understanding. It is a story of endurance, of pragmatic adaptation, of continuing to plant and harvest and preserve and care for children even when death visits neighboring households. It is a story of finding sustainable patterns that allow life to continue despite vulnerability, despite limited resources, despite constant threat. Perhaps most meaningfully, it is a story that connects directly to our present, the medieval peasants' practical knowledge forming the foundation upon which modern understanding eventually built. Their genetic survival, ensuring our own existence centuries later. The afternoon continues with routines unchanged for generations. Your hands work methodically at the necessary tasks of survival, patching a worn tunic, preparing vegetables for the evening meal, checking the smoking meat for proper drying. These actions require no conscious thought. Your body knows them as intimately as it knows breathing. Medieval knowledge lives in the muscles, in movements practiced thousands of times until they become automatic. This embodied knowledge passes from parent to child through observation and imitation rather than formal instruction, creating an unbroken chain of practical skill extending backwards through countless generations. Your daughter works nearby, her smaller hands mimicking your movements as she prepares fibers for spinning. She doesn't know the physics of tension and twists that create strong thread from loose wool, but her fingers are learning the feel of proper technique. This physical education forms the core of medieval knowledge transfer, bodies teaching bodies how to perform the countless tasks necessary for survival. By the time she reaches adulthood, her hands will hold generations of accumulated wisdom without need for written instruction or formal education. The rhythm of your work creates a meditative state, awareness focused entirely on the task at hand. This present moment attention characterizes medieval consciousness, Mind and body united in immediate activity rather than divided between physical action and abstract thought. Time moves differently in this state, measured by task completion rather than arbitrary units. You don't think it's 3 o'clock. You think the bread needs turning, or the shadow has reached the doorpost. The natural world provides all necessary timekeeping, the body's hunger, the sun's position, the changing light. Late afternoon brings your husband and son from the fields again, the daily return that structures each day. They carry additional firewood gathered on their way home, always thinking ahead to winter needs. Medieval planning happens this way. Opportunistic gathering whenever resources present themselves. Small daily acquisitions building gradually toward necessary stockpiles. No single day's collection seems significant, but over weeks and months, the woodpile grows to a size that might sustain the family through winter cold. Your husband inspects the smoking meat, adjusts the placement of several pieces for more even exposure. This attention to food preservation reflects survival priorities, making the rare windfall of abundant protein last as long as possible. The techniques he uses were not invented in his lifetime or even his grandfather's. They represent centuries of refinement, countless generations observing what works, what fails, what produces food that remains edible through lean seasons. This accumulated practical knowledge, passed through demonstration rather than documentation, forms the true wealth of medieval communities. Evening approaches with its own set of tasks. Animals must be secured for the night, protected from wolves and other predators. The goat is brought into a small attached shed, chickens coaxed into their coop. Even the family dog, half wild and working rather than pet, is fed scraps to ensure it remains nearby overnight. Its senses alert to approaching dangers that human ears might miss. These daily security measures acknowledge the vulnerability of medieval life, the thin barriers between safety and disaster that must be maintained through constant vigilance. The evening meal brings the family together around the central fire. Tonight's food is enriched by a small portion of the boar meat, smoked just long enough to be edible though not fully preserved. This modest celebration of hunting success feels luxurious after weeks of simpler fare. Medieval pleasure comes from these small variations in routine, these momentary improvements in daily existence. The capacity to appreciate subtle differences, to find satisfaction in marginally better circumstances, characterizes a mindset shaped by general scarcity and uncertainty. As darkness deepens, outside, the interior of your cottage glows with firelight. Shadows dance on walls of wattle and daub as flames shift and flicker. This nighttime illumination limits activities but doesn't end them entirely. By the fire's light, your husband repairs a leather strap for a farming tool. Your oldest son practices knot-tying techniques essential for snaring small game. Your daughter continues spinning the wool prepared earlier. Productive activity continues until sleep becomes necessary. Daylight hours are too precious to waste on tasks that can be performed by firelight. Conversation happens alongside these evening activities, not as separate entertainment, but integrated with necessary work. Stories are shared, observations exchanged, plans discussed. Your husband mentions signs of early frost he noticed while working in the fields today, leading to discussion of whether harvest should begin earlier than usual. Medieval decision-making happens this way, collective observation generating, consensus about appropriate action. No single authority determines agricultural timing. Instead, accumulated evidence and community wisdom guide choices that affect everyone's survival. The fire gradually diminishes as evening progresses, conserving precious fuel for morning when it will be needed again. Your family settles onto the shared, sleeping space, bodies arranged according to warmth needs. The youngest children sleep between adults, benefiting from body heat on both sides. Older children arrange themselves at the edges, their more resilient bodies better able to handle cooler positions. This arrangement happens without discussion, another example of practical knowledge embedded in daily routine rather than articulated as explicit instruction. Sleep claims each family member in turn, eyes closing despite the hard surface beneath and smoke-laden air above. Medieval sleep accommodates these discomforts, the exhausted body finding rest regardless of conditions modern people would find intolerable. The sounds of breathing fill the darkened space, occasionally punctuated by a cough or shift in position. Even in sleep, medieval bodies remain subtly alert, responsive to sounds that might signal danger or need. This lighter sleep pattern, different from modern expectations of uninterrupted unconsciousness, serves protective functions in a world where threats don't observe human schedules. Dawn arrives with its habitual cold mist, the temperature drop that precedes sunrise. Your body knows this signal even before conscious awareness returns, limbs beginning to move, eyes opening to barely perceptible lightening of the cottage interior. The cycle begins again. Fire rekindled from carefully banked embers. Morning food preparation. Division of family labor according to the day's requirements. The comforting familiarity of these patterns provides structure, purpose, continuity that transcends individual days or seasons. Medieval life proceeds this way, one day flowing into the next with variations dictated by weather, season, unexpected events. The plague that recently visited your village represents one such disruption, temporarily altering routines but not fundamentally changing the underlying patterns of survival. Other disruptions will come: harsh winters, crop failures, livestock disease, human conflict. Each requires adaptation within the established framework of community knowledge and resource sharing, the resilient social structures that allow continuation despite adversity. This particular morning brings heavy dew, grass and leaves wet as though from rain, though the sky remained clear overnight. Your husband predicts fair weather for days ahead based on this sign, another example of observational knowledge that guides daily planning more reliably than abstract understanding. Medieval weather prediction combines such direct observation with patterns recognized over lifetimes and generations, creating practical forecasting more immediately useful than theoretical explanations of atmospheric conditions. What matters isn't why the heavy dew forms, but what it reliably indicates about conditions to follow. Your youngest child wakes with slight sniffles, not concerning enough to delay normal activities, but worthy of preventative attention. You prepare a honey and thyme mixture, administering a small spoonful before the child joins siblings for morning porridge. This routine treatment for minor respiratory symptoms represents medieval preventative medicine, addressing potential illness before it becomes severe. The effectiveness varies, sometimes preventing development of serious conditions, sometimes merely offering comfort during natural recovery processes. Without understanding immune system functioning, you nevertheless support it through generations of observed beneficial practices. The day's tasks reflect awareness of changing seasons. Late summer transitions toward early autumn. Subtly shifting temperature patterns still warm during days but increasingly cool at night. Food preservation intensifies during this transition. The historical harvest home, representing not celebration but desperate work to secure winter survival. Your family participates in this intensification, every available hour dedicated to collecting, processing, storing food that will prevent hunger during coming months when growth ceases and stored supplies must sustain life. Before night came, a stranger appeared at the edge of the village, a wandering friar wearing the rough robes of a mendicant order. Such spiritual travelers move between communities offering prayers, blessings, occasional medical knowledge gained through monastery training. This particular friar has seen many plague-affected villages, carries both spiritual comfort and practical advice about disease prevention. The village welcomes him with simple hospitality, a place by the communal fire, modest food contributions from multiple households creating a shared meal. The friar speaks of other communities, some devastated by plague, some relatively spared. He attributes difference to both divine judgment and practical factors, God's will expressed through natural means. His medical advice reflects monastery learning, emphasizing cleanliness within medieval understanding, recommending vinegar washing of surfaces, burning of aromatic herbs, isolation of the ill. Some recommendations have actual preventative value. Others serve psychological comfort rather than physical protection. Medieval medicine makes no distinction between these functions, both contributing to overall well-being as understood within period frameworks. More importantly, the friar brings news of the wider world beyond your isolated village. Political changes in distant cities, conflicts between noble houses, patterns of plague movement across regions. This information holds practical value, helping villages prepare for potential disruptions to trade, anticipate food shortages, understand disease progression. Wandering religious figures serve this communication function in medieval society, their sanctioned mobility creating information, networks otherwise impossible in a world without mass communication technologies. The village listens attentively around the evening fire, absorbing both spiritual messages and practical information. Medieval learning happens this way, orally, communally, integrating new knowledge with existing understanding through discussion and consensus. No individual determines what information is accepted or rejected. Instead, collective wisdom filters incoming ideas through experience-tested frameworks. Innovations that align with observed reality are incorporated. Those that contradict established patterns receive skeptical evaluation before potential adoption. Night falls on the gathered community, the friar continuing his stories by firelight. Children listen from the edges, absorbing both content and cultural transmission patterns. Medieval education happens through such incidental exposure. Children learning not through dedicated instruction, but through ambient participation in adult activities. They absorb information about distant places, historical events, religious concepts without directed teaching. Their developing minds naturally incorporating available knowledge within existing frameworks. The gathering disperses as night deepens, families returning to individual cottages for sleep. Tomorrow the friar will continue his journey, carrying news of your village to the next community, creating connections through shared information. This human network functions as medieval infrastructure. Not physical roads or communication technologies, but people moving between settlements with purposeful information exchange. The system lacks modern efficiency, but provides essential knowledge transfer that helps communities adapt to changing conditions across broader regions than individual experience could encompass. Morning arrives with typical misty routine activities, beginning even before full daylight. The friar joins village men heading to fields, offering blessings on crops not yet harvested. This integration of spiritual and practical action characterizes medieval relationships with religious figures, their function encompassing both worldly and divine domains. No separation exists between religious practice and agricultural success, between spiritual blessing and physical harvest. The friar's prayers over ripening grain represent genuine contribution to community welfare as understood within period frameworks. Your family's day proceeds with heightened awareness of seasonal transition, the subtle changes that signal approaching autumn. Birds gather in preparation for migration. Certain plants show yellowing leaves. Morning air carries distinctive chill. These signals trigger intensified preservation activities, the race against winter that has defined human survival since ancient times. Medieval agricultural communities exist in this perpetual cycle, the periods of growth and harvest counterbalanced by seasons of scarcity and careful rationing. Success means having enough stored to bridge the gap until next growth cycle. Failure means hunger or worse. Midday brings women together for collective food processing, turning garden harvests into preserved stores. Vegetables are pickled in vinegar, fruits dried or preserved with honey, herbs bundled for drying. The work requires many hands. The shared labor both practical necessity and social bonding opportunity. Medieval community cohesion develops through such cooperative activities. Relationships strengthened through mutual contribution to survival tasks. These connections provide security beyond physical resources, creating support systems that help individual families weather crises that might otherwise prove devastating. The friar joins this gathering briefly, offering blessing over preservation activities. His presence reminds of spiritual dimensions underlying physical survival. The medieval worldview that integrated practical action with divine purpose. Food preservation isn't merely technical process, but participation in created order. Human cooperation with divine provision. The friars' prayers acknowledge this integrated understanding, the continuum between physical work and spiritual meaning that characterizes medieval consciousness. There is no secular sphere, no distinction between religious and non-religious activities. All existence operates within divine framework as understood through period theological concepts. Afternoon continues with specialized preservation tasks. Some women focus on vinegar pickling, others on drying techniques, others on root vegetable storage. Preparation. This division allows concentration of expertise, each person contributing particular skills to collective process. Medieval specialization happens this way, not through formal occupational designation, but through recognized aptitude, developed over years. Someone known for successful preservation methods teaches others, demonstrates techniques, passes knowledge between generations through direct demonstration and guided practice. Your own contribution involves herb preparation. Your recognized knowledge of drying methods and storage techniques respected among village women. You demonstrate proper bundling technique to younger women, showing how stems must be positioned for optimal air circulation, how bundles must be sized for proper drying without mold formation. This knowledge transfer happens without formal teaching role, simply through acknowledged expertise shared willingly for community benefit. Medieval education operates through such relationships, knowledge flowing from experienced practitioners to observant learners without institutional mediation. The cooperative work continues through afternoon. Conversation flowing alongside productive activity. Topics range from practical concerns to social observations to spiritual questions prompted by the friar's visit. This integration of work and social interaction characterizes medieval community function. Productive activity never separated from relational context. Modern compartmentalization between work time and social time doesn't exist. Instead, necessary tasks provide framework for human connection, conversation, knowledge exchange. The resulting social fabric offers resilience during crisis periods. The relationships developed during routine activities becoming support structures during hardship. Evening approaches with its own rhythms. The smoke of cooking fires rising from cottages across the village. The friar has moved on, continuing his journey with blessings exchanged and small food gifts to sustain his travel. His brief presence leaves ripples of conversation. discussion of his news and observations continuing among villagers. Medieval information processing happens this way. Collective consideration over days following initial introduction. Community consensus emerging gradually through repeated conversation and comparative assessment with existing knowledge. Your family gathers for evening meal. The simple food shared with quiet appreciation. Medieval mealtimes lack modern conversational expectations. Silence frequently accompanies eating, especially when fatigue from physical labor predominates. Communication happens through practical exchanges. Passing food, indicating sufficiency. Occasionally sharing observations relevant to shared activities. The absence of trivial conversation doesn't indicate emotional distance, but different cultural expectations. Different priorities shaped by survival imperatives rather than social performance. Night settles over the village. Darkness near complete except for occasional firelight visible through doorways. Medieval nights are profoundly dark. Modern, light pollution entirely absent. The darkness shapes behavior, activities, sleep patterns. Most work becomes impossible without daylight or precious artificial illumination, enforcing rest cycles aligned with natural light. Your family settles into sleep pattern established over countless generations. Bodies adapting to environmental conditions through shared warmth, positioned for maximum heat conservation during cooler autumn nights. This physical adaptation represents unspoken knowledge, embodied rather than articulated understanding of survival requirements. Morning arrives, another day of harvest preparation beginning before full daylight. The village moves with collective purpose. Each household contributing to seasonal transition activities that ensure winter survival. Fields are harvested section by section. Crops brought for processing. Storage spaces prepared for months of preservation. Medieval agricultural communities function as loosely coordinated organisms during such critical periods. Individual actions aligning without centralized direction through shared understanding of necessary sequence and timing. Your specific tasks today involve checking dried herbs already hanging, determining which have reached proper dryness for storage. This assessment requires sensory knowledge developed over years. Fingers testing brittleness. Nose detecting moisture content through subtle scent changes. Medieval quality control happens through such embodied knowledge, through physical interaction with materials rather than standardized measurements or visual indicators. Your fingers know when herbs have dried sufficiently. This knowledge as reliable as any modern moisture meter, but contained within your sensory experience rather than external technology. Midday brings communal bread baking. The village oven fired for maximum efficiency. Each family brings prepared dough, taking turns using the heat for baking after initial firing. This cooperative arrangement conserves precious fuel, allows efficient use of constructed resources too expensive for individual households to maintain separately. Medieval resource sharing happens through such practical arrangements, not through abstract concepts of communal property, but through specific shared use agreements developed over generations and maintained through reciprocal participation. Your family's bread baking turn comes mid-afternoon. The carefully prepared dough carried to communal oven by your daughter. The loaves contain primarily barley flour, wheaten flour reserved for special occasions or tax payments. Medieval grain usage reflects both agricultural conditions and social structures. Different grains assigned different values and purposes through established practice. The resulting bread forms dietary staple, providing majority of calories through winter months when other foods become scarce. Its proper preparation and baking represent survival-critical knowledge transmitted primarily through demonstration and guided practice across generations. While bread bakes, you continue herb sorting, separating medicinal varieties from culinary ones. Each category requires specific storage conditions, specific usage knowledge. Medieval herbal medicine operates through such categorical understanding, through recognition of properties and applications developed over centuries of observation. You don't know plant biochemistry, don't understand compounds that create therapeutic effects, but generations of trial and error have identified which herbs reduce fever, which ease breathing difficulties, which aid digestion. This practical knowledge proves effective despite lacking theoretical framework that would explain mechanism of action. Late afternoon brings your husband and son from harvest work, tired but satisfied with day's progress. The grain crop appears abundant this year, weather having favored growth throughout summer. This potential bounty lifts village spirits collectively. The prospect of adequate winter stores providing psychological relief that transcends immediate circumstances. Medieval emotional states respond directly to survival indicators, a promising harvest generating genuine well-being through reduced anticipatory anxiety about winter scarcity. Your family retrieves baked bread from communal oven, the dense loaves representing substantial caloric security. The smell triggers physical response, mouths watering in anticipation of simple but satisfying nourishment. Medieval sensory experience remains closely tied to survival signaling. Food smells generating stronger response than modern experience, because connection between specific foods and continued existence remains direct rather than abstract. Your children's excitement about fresh bread reflects not merely preference, but instinctive recognition of survival importance. Evening meal centers around the fresh bread, accompanied by simple vegetable pottage and a small amount of precious salt. The family eats with appreciation bordering on reverence, the food representing not merely nourishment, but security, continuity, successful participation in natural cycles that sustain human life. Medieval relationship with food lacks modern dissociation between production and consumption, between agricultural labor and eventual nourishment. The bread connects directly to fieldwork, to soil preparation, planting, weeding, harvesting, threshing, grinding. Each bite closes circle between human effort and sustenance. Each swallow represents successful continuation of life-sustaining cycles. Night brings earliest frost of season, the temperature dropping enough to create delicate white coating on grass and exposed surfaces. This first frost signals definitive, seasonal transition, accelerating harvest activities that might otherwise proceed more gradually. Medieval agricultural timing relies heavily on such natural indicators: frost patterns, bird migrations, plant changes, providing calendar more relevant to local conditions than arbitrary date designations. Your husband notes the frost with mixture of concern and acceptance. The natural cycle, neither good nor bad, but simply reality requiring appropriate response.